I'm looking at the Pac-12 standings, and what there seems to be is from, let's look at from Cal up to Washington. There's just like a whole group of teams with nearly similar records for for the Pac-12 standings, and
Mhm.
it's just like, okay, well, where do you see it going with that group of teams? Who's going to emerge from that pack?
Oh man, so from that pack between Cal and Washington, it's tough because Washington got off to a really good conference start. I think they went 4-0 to start the conference, and then lost a home game to Utah, and you expected them to bounce right back from that, but then they went to the Oregon schools and got swept. So now it's looking like the Washington from the non-conference season that was inconsistent, that lost games that they should have lost. So you don't know what to do with them. You feel like you can't trust them. And with Cal, I think honestly Cal was a little overrated by a lot of the prognosticators and the sports writers coming into the season. And you can't blame them though, because they have two dynamic guards.
Right.
And but the question was who else could be helpful for them going forward. And I don't think anybody else has really stepped up very much for them. And so, same kind of deal as Washington. You really don't know what to expect.
Yeah.
Those two guards, Alan Crabb and Justin Cobbs for Cal, have to play excellent, beyond excellent, most nights for them to win games. So, man, it's a roll of the dice. Nobody knows what's going to happen. I think right now the only clear cut is that Oregon is at the top, and Arizona is right there behind them, along with UCLA. And I think those three teams, are the best teams, and they've established that. But even with those three, you don't know who's going to finish first, second, and third. It can go either way.
Right. Who faces out of those top three teams the toughest run?
The toughest run left. Well, for Oregon, they have the easiest one because they don't face UCLA and Arizona again.
Right.
And then you got Arizona. Let's see, who do they have? I know Arizona will go and play at UCLA before the season is over. So I think Arizona and UCLA, you could say it's similar.
Yeah.
But Oregon, they're on the move because they have the best record now, and then they have the easiest of the schedules remaining. So it's their conference to lose right now.
Right. And do you think any of the teams that are at the bottom of the table are going to cause some upsets?
Yes, that will happen. I mean, just last night, Stanford beat Oregon at Stanford. And Stanford's not a bottom level team, but standings wise, they're in the middle of the conference. But they can compete with any team in the conference, which they just proved. So I think you'll see that. You'll see some teams that will play the spoiler role. Washington State is at the bottom of the conference right now.
Yeah.
Along with a couple teams, Oregon State, but those teams will trip up some of these top 3 and 4 teams. So that's why it's always tough, especially with the Pac-12, because there's just so much parity in the conference. Nobody's really set apart from other teams.
Yeah.
I mean, even Washington, when they were undefeated, they lost to a Utah team that hadn't won a game in the conference yet.
Wow.
It just shows that any night somebody could beat the other person, and I think it'll come down to the last weekend to see where everybody stands.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Who was the biggest shock in the sense of, wow, they're at the bottom of the table, and we did expect that, and the same thing for, wow, they're at the top.
At the top. Yeah. I think the biggest shock at the bottom was Oregon State because they got off to a good non-conference start, only losing 2 games. They lost a third game at the end of the non-conference, but they had an injury with Angus Brandt, who was their starting senior center,
yeah,
who's kind of a double-double type player in points and rebounds. But I think a lot of people thought that Oregon State, with the talent they had and the firepower, with 5 players averaging double figures, people thought that they would find their way somewhere at least towards the middle. And they got off to an 0-5 starting conference, then won a game, then they lost the next. So now they're staring at 1-6, and they're on the road at the barrier schools. So that's the team at the bottom that I don't think people expected to be quite as low as they are.
Yep.
And then the team at the top that is somewhat surprising is Oregon, because they lost some seniors last year. They lost Garrett Sim and DeVoe Joseph, who were their two backcourt stars, and then Olu Ashalu, who was the big post guy. They lost a lot of senior firepower, and they were relying on a new freshman point guard and shooting guard in Dominic Artis and Damian Dotson to come in and lead. And you didn't know how long it would take those guys to adapt to the collegiate game, but they did it fairly quickly. So I think a lot of people were expecting Arizona to be number one, or even UCLA with those talented freshmen they have to be number one, but Oregon took the lead.